Hi Urmi. Thank you so much for joining us on our special edition guest podcast. And for everybody watching, welcome to the Early Career Podcast. My name is Priyanka Mahankali, and today we have with us Urmi Hossain. Urmi, hi, and welcome to the Early Career Podcast.
Hi Priyanka, how are you?
I'm good, thank you. How about you? How's your day been?
I guess it could have been better. There you go.
Maybe it will get better, right?
Definitely.
Thank you so much for your time, first of all, coming on this podcast. I really appreciate, especially, women who are in thriving careers coming and talking, sharing their stories. I think that's very powerful. So thank you so much for being here and sharing your advice about your journey, your advice, and also what does success mean to you. So let's get started. I guess we can start off by having you introduce yourself, Urmi. Can you tell us all a little bit about yourself?
Yeah, definitely. So my name is Urmi. I am based in Montreal and I'm a proud woman in finance. I've been working in finance for the past almost 10 years. But outside of my 9 to 5, as I like to call it, I also have my 5 to 9, where basically I do all this bunch of things. So I am a self-published author, speaker, mentor, blogger, YouTuber. I'm also new in the podcast world. I launched my first podcast 3 months ago, and I am part of an organization called Women in Leadership, and I'm the co-chair for the Montreal chapter.
Very cool. Wow, what's the podcast about?
So the podcast is called Stories Beyond Borders, and it's basically stories about migration, people being multicultural, people coming from one country and going to another country, and it's a storytelling podcast. So basically, I use this platform to give a chance to anyone to basically share their stories about resilience, stories about determination, why they moved from one place to go to another place. So it's very interesting because I also feel like I'm learning a lot.
Yeah, that's awesome. I mean, I can relate to it because I myself moved 5 different countries. And in the last 5 years, I moved from the US to Canada, and that I think that was the hardest move for me as an adult because went through. I think I moved right before the pandemic, and then I had to go through living in a new country all by myself and being in the middle of the pandemic. So I think I had nobody to talk to and no friends, and so I can totally relate to that.
Yeah, and
Was
it
there
can feel lonely.
Yeah, absolutely. Was there a reason that you started this podcast?
Yes, it's because I've been invited to so many podcasts where I talk about my stories of, moving around from one place to another. And I don't know if I told you this, but I'm born and raised in Italy, and both of my parents are from Bangladesh. So growing up, I had the struggle of like trying to fit in both cultures, but I never quite felt 100% myself. And so I've been to so many podcasts where I talked about this, and now I was like, I think it's time that I give the mic to other people.
Right. Very interesting. And where are you? Uh, so you were born in Bangladesh, or you were born in Italy and then you were raised in Italy?
I was born and raised in Italy. Yeah,
Okay, I see. And then you moved. When did you move to Canada?
in 2010,
Okay, okay. And then so you've been here for
15 years.
15 years. Yeah. How do you like Canada compared
I
to
d-
Italy?
so there is good and bad.
Yeah.
There is good and bad, I would say. I think let's just start with the bad thing so we can get rid of that. I think the weather is definitely a challenge. The winter in Montreal is a challenge, I have to say. I think at the beginning I had a little bit of culture shocks because I was really not used to a lot of things, especially because I think in Italy I just grew up having Italian people around me, but now in Montreal I have to be aware that there are people from different parts of the world. And so there was that, and also other things that I'm not used to is how everything closes at 5 in Montreal, and I'm like, I finish work at 5 and I maybe want to enjoy my afternoon, but everything closes at 5 in winter. So that's the bad thing. And I think the good thing is that I feel like In Montreal, especially, you can integrate pretty easily because it's so diverse. And I love the European atmosphere and vibe that we have in Montreal because there is the whole French influence, which I very much love. So I really like that. I like the diversity that Montreal offers. And I'm so glad that there's also a big Italian community. So every time I'm going to my Italian stores to shop around, I feel like I'm at home because I'm finally eating my Italian food. So I think that's a good thing. Yeah.
Right. I actually love Montreal. I mean, after Toronto, I think Montreal is the second most visited place for me. I think I went to Montreal like 5 times in 1 year. So you can imagine how much actually like Montreal. You know, the streets and just the brunch vibes on the
Yes.
Saturday. And I mean, of course, I'm speaking from a tourist perspective. For you,
Right.
it must be different. So, but yeah, I love Montreal, and I just like the whole French vibe, and I think it just feels different than Toronto.
It does. It does. And like I was in Toronto couple of days ago, and it wasn't my first time being in Toronto, but I can feel Toronto is it's a bit more. It gives a bit more of a city vibe, and I think it's very much similar to how you see it in New York, but it's less intense. Whereas Montreal, I feel like there is a bit of a balance between life and work. And I think that you really do feel that French vibe when you go to the stores and when you buy the bakery, when you buy the fresh bread. Like you can feel that from those little things.
Yeah, I totally agree. You know, I feel like we should be getting paid for advertising Montreal to the rest of the
Yes.
You're doing such a good job at that. You're doing such a
Yes.
good job at that. So, Urmi, you mentioned that you were a proud woman in finance, right? So, can you tell us a little bit about how you started getting interested in a career in finance? Was it always something you wanted to do, or you kind of stumbled upon it? And then, how has it been so far?
Yeah, I would say it was. I always like to describe my relationship with finance as love at first sight. And we have to go back to university when I was actually not majoring in finance. I had international business as my major, but then I realized how much I did not like that. So I had finance as my minor. I took one class and I was just in love with it. And it's a love that has been staying. I think it's a love that will stay there forever because I remember enjoying so much my finance classes and I would study and everything would be effortless. Like I just enjoyed this so much. And then I basically decided to pursue a career in finance. Of course, I did not work like I didn't do the things that I'm doing right now. I think when you're starting a career, you just have to get your feet wet and you have to start anywhere just to get the experience. So I did work in other financial companies in different roles. I worked as a client support administrator. I worked in compliance as anti-money laundering analyst. And now I work in portfolio management, which was my end goal, which is also why I also got into designations such as the CFA. And I took also some Canadian security courses. So for me, it's something that always stayed, and it's something that really keeps me passionate about the things that I do. So I very much enjoy the things that I do. Yeah.
Seems like it, but what is it that you like so much about finance? What is it that keeps you so passionate? And especially you mentioned about portfolio management, right? What do you like about
Yeah.
it so much?
So what I like about finance is in general, like on a broad sense, it's how dynamic it is. Like everything, like finance is ever changing, ever evolving, and I feel like it matches really well with my personality, which is very, very dynamic. And I like what I like about portfolio management, which is also what I have learned in my CFA program. It's the fact that there is quantitative aspect to it, but then you also have a qualitative aspect to it because you have to analyze things. And as I like to say, like the numbers that we see out there, they all have a stories. And so I like the background story about those numbers that I have to deal with when I'm calculating stuff or when I'm seeing like a price in a chart and so forth. So I really like how dynamic finance is.
I see. Very interesting. Can you also explain what portfolio management is for people like us? We don't really know what that means.
So basically, portfolio management, simply what it means is that you are managing a portfolio of investments. So a portfolio is basically a group of like securities, and you're managing them so that you can get a certain return to achieve a goal for a certain client. So portfolio management is a lot about servicing clients, and you serve clients from that belong to a certain profile. Typically, it's high net worth clients who have a typical financial goal, which is retirement, maybe, I don't know, leaving money to their kids, inheritance, maybe they want to travel. So it's basically we are making sure that we are managing those investment and preserving the value of it, basically.
Interesting. And so what would you say is like maybe like a key lesson that you learned, and maybe what is like one of the biggest challenges that then led you to that lesson that you learned?
So the biggest challenge is, so I remember when I first started working that I wanted to get into portfolio management right away, but I kept getting rejected. I just kept getting rejected. So that what happened. And I know I tried many, many times, but one lesson that I have learned is that I needed those rejections to work on myself in the meantime. And then after 5 or 6 years that I kept trying, and then I gave up at some point because I was like, I'm just going to wait for the right time. When the right time came and I applied for it, I finally got into this role. So my lesson here is that rejections, when they say our redirection, is quite true. You need those rejections to take a pause, to reflect, and to work on yourself so that you can, become better when you are applying for that job.
Interesting. So you're saying that rejection is actually can be a good thing if it is
Yeah,
pursued in that way.
yeah, yeah, exactly. Yeah.
Interesting. I was actually going to ask you about how would you handle rejection, and you actually answered my question by saying that's what made you become this person that you are today. What would be your advice to people who, have job interviews and they get rejected from those job interviews and may lose motivation because of that? How would you ask them to handle those situations?
So I always say rejections are quite healthy because if everything was easy, life would be great. But I think with rejection, you learn a lot of things such as determination. You learn about resilience. You learn about tenacity, and these are skills that no one will teach you, but you only get them through experiences. And I think when you are getting rejected, yeah, it's normal. It's normal that we feel demotivated. We're only humans. There are so many things that will happen to us in those moments, and probably you'll feel not good enough. You'll feel less confident. But I think what's a good thing about it is that you should see rejections as a learning opportunity. So maybe ask for a feedback. And I know sometimes it's not easy to get a feedback, but ask for feedback, or like reach out to people who are in similar roles and ask them like, okay, what did you do to get into that role? What are some of the skills that you needed to learn to get on into that role, and use those information to work on yourself and maybe learn a little bit more. So maybe, I don't know, let me just give you an example. You're applying for a job that requires you to, like, it's not enough that you have a bachelor degree and maybe you need to have completed CFA level 1 exam. You get rejected for the job and then you find out that maybe you need to pass the CFA level 1 exam. So take that opportunity to basically like get that added into your resume. So things like that, basically.
So take a more constructive approach to rejection and not take it too personally, right? I think, yeah, and I have, I guess, something to add to that is, many times in my life when I've been rejected from things, I would first think of it as, why did that happen?
Mm.
Right? And then actually something better came along. And then I was glad that I got rejected from the previous thing, because then if I took that, I wouldn't get this other thing that was actually better for me. So sometimes rejection can be a good thing for you. It's almost like you dodging a bullet in some sense,
Yeah.
because it, it can, maybe it's as you said, it's redirecting you to where you actually need to be. And that's why you're getting rejected from something else. So that's a good, I like it. That's a positive spin on how do we, and especially when we are in our 20s, right? We feel more intensely about these rejections.
Yeah.
Feel like, oh my God, the whole world is ending now, right? That's,
Yeah.
I felt like that. I don't know about you, but I always felt like, oh my God, I don't know what to do. And I would just kind of sulk, you know. And
Yeah.
I think over time, I started looking at it as more objectively and realizing, because when I look back, I'm like, oh, I'm glad I didn't get that because I got this other thing. And
Yeah.
it takes time and patience to wait, to then look back, to then realize that what you have now is actually better than what you were crying about.
Yeah, and I also like to think that everything, like I was talking about this, everything happens for a reason and everything has its time. So maybe you were not ready in that moment. Maybe the world felt you were not ready in that moment, but Like, because in my case, I was not ready in that moment, I think, but fast forward 6 years, I finally got it. And it was just about me being patient with myself and really taking time to work on myself to get those necessary skills. So, as I always like to say, things come back to you eventually. You just have to be patient.
And you have to believe in yourself. You have to keep believing yourself until that time comes to then, because it seems like you kept pursuing things and you kept believing in yourself, and that's why you got to this point, right? Where
Yeah.
you know what you need, what you really wanted. That's great. I mean, I guess a very obvious question from that came to my mind when I heard about you being in finances, because it's the same. I'm in tech, so women in tech. You might have heard this term right everywhere. There's not a lot of women in tech, is why there's that terminology exists, right? And I'm assuming it's the same thing in finance. So
Yeah.
what does it look like, and how do you navigate the finance industry? Being a woman.
It is, it can be challenging, I have to say this truth. It can be. And like you said, tech, finance, a lot of these industries are very male dominated. But I think the industry needs us. They need people like me and you so that we can change the narrative going forward. And I did have situation where, I would bring this up in interviews. Like I would be very, very transparent about it. I was like, okay, what do you do, to have a bit more representation? And I think the interviewer really appreciated this when I would bring it up because I think it gave them some time to think. But at the same time, he was also quite honest. Like I remember this interview that I did many years ago. He told me that it's not that they don't want to hire women, it's just that women are not applying for these jobs. And I think sometimes there is an actual structural issue. We're so used to seeing, a certain gender in certain industry that we find it a bit hard to change that. So having conversation like that, I think really helps. And I know that I did not get that job, but then they reached out back to me for another job. But at that time I was like, no, I don't want to do this. It's just because I did not feel a fit. So I feel like, having honest conversation and being transparent is something that people do appreciate. And for me, no matter where I go, it's always very important that things such as diversity representations are taken care of. These are things that I care of. So I want that, like I want to work for a company where this is something that they value. So for me, those are like things that I really, really, really matter. I know it's hard, but at the same time, I don't like to give up.
Yeah, seems like it. And why do you think, and why do you so strongly believe that diversity and having representation from all kinds of groups is important? Because I didn't realize how important it is until, in the last few years. So did you realize that at some point in your life, or did you always feel that way? And why do you think it's important?
It's important. I think I realized it a bit later during my career. It's important because I feel like, representation and diversity, like if you have someone who is, different, someone who is, let's say, similar to you or different from the rest of the people, some of your own needs will be addressed. Because I always say, like, women of color, they go to certain things that not other people go through. And I feel like for certain ethnicities, it's quite difficult to understand what we go through, So, like, when we think about, I don't know, microaggressions and stuff like that, or there's so many things. So I feel like a lot of things can be addressed when we have those kind of representations because you cannot have one person fighting the same fight, so you need to have people supporting that. You need to have people raising awareness. I think that's the thing, like raising awareness and educating the rest of the people that there is there are diverse people here and we need to be mindful about the things that we do, the food that we bring, and the religions that are out there.
Yeah, I completely agree. I mean, a few months back, I was leading commercial aviation,
Mm,
that segment within EWS. And of course, aircraft technicians and pilots and, people in the manufacturing floor, most of them are men.
right.
And even till this day, like sometimes I will hear people, and I'm not kidding, Urmi, people have actually randomly said, if it's a female pilot sitting or flying my aircraft, I'm just gonna get up, something as a joke. Yeah, and I've actually heard that, and people have said that to me as a joke and expecting me to laugh.
Yeah, no.
And that's it. And I think this speaks, to the representation part, right? I think if more of us do that, take on those roles, then I think it will become normalized, right? And for example, this is just a coincidence that it came in the news recently that India is actually the first country that has the highest female women population as aircraft pilots. So I think like about 12%. And I was like, wow, that's amazing. But the thing is, it takes people who are allies to actually also create that space for women to actually trust that women can take on these high stress, decision making kind of roles,
Yeah.
critical roles, like like being an aircraft pilot, right, where you could be making lots of critical decisions, and sometimes the world perceives women to be not or to be not capable of making those types of decisions. And the fact that representation in this example, for instance, is increasing, makes people more confident. And actually recently I was sitting in one of the aircrafts, and I was traveling from India to Doha, and both the captain and the first officer were both female, because I heard their announcements and stuff, and I was like, huh, because initially, you know what, even my mind went to the fact that maybe that's the cabin crew speaking, and then I realized, no, it's not. That's not the cabin crew. That's the captain. And because the minute you hear a female's voice, we are conditioned to think that it's not the captain, right?
Yeah.
So,
Yeah. 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 Yeah.
right.
Exactly.
And so, and now I think it's changing, because now in my mind is changing, because now when I hear a woman's voice, I'm not instantly thinking that it's the cabin crew. I'm also probably thinking that it could be the pilot or the first officer. So I think a lot of things are, and this is just one example, but I think it's the same in finance, it's the same in tech, it's the same in almost every area where as more women start entering the workforce, I think people will start believing that we are capable of more. I think the only challenge with that is the feeling that you need to constantly prove yourself
Yourself.
to people. How do you, seems like you also resonate with that. How do you
Yeah.
deal with that in your career in general? Do you ever feel that you have to prove yourself more, or and yeah, how do you deal with that?
Yeah. So here's the thing. I also resonate with what you said about proving yourself, but I think this comes from how we were conditioned from when we were young, like younger females. And I think it's that's where it's coming from. So automatically, no matter where we go, we feel that we have this job that we always have to prove ourselves. And I hate to say that I also see it around me too as well, that all the females working there, they have to prove themselves. But I'm like, but why? Why do we have to prove that ourselves? Why is it not enough by doing the essential and showing them that we are good enough at this? It's just that I think it's also like I was saying, it's in our nature to prove ourselves that we can do this because the world does not believe in us. But it's also because we probably are not believing in us ourselves too. So we have to work on
Probably.
that. And
Yeah.
yeah, we need to get over that challenge and start believing in us so that is showing to the world that we can do it. So
Yeah, I think you're right. It's a combination of the world not believing in us and us continuing to propagate that story, right? By us not believing in our own selves, we are also creating that further story, and we're helping the world almost not believe in us. So, what would your advice be to, our younger generation, people who are in their 20s, to encourage them to believe in themselves, even if they don't feel like they have anything going for them?
you know what? You touched upon a good point at the beginning, and I think younger people should do that. Like when you said about finding allies, that's very important. That's very, very important. Allies and mentors, especially when you're starting your careers, because maybe you might not believe in yourself, but your mentors, your ally, your friend, I don't know, someone around you might believe in you. And when you start having those pieces of encouragement, you start to believe in yourself too. So I always say, like, who you surround yourself with is very, very important. And you want to have people that are genuinely interested in your personal growth and professional growth. Because if you have people who are bringing you down, especially when you're in your 20s, you're starting like bad. Like you're not starting in the right foot. So
Exactly.
you need to make sure that you have right people around you. And I think as soon as you start working, you need to seek for those people within your company because these people will be advocating for you in the future. Like if there is a promotion, if there is a special project, if they want to send you somewhere, they will think of you if you have done a good job and if you have made an impact in your role.
I think this is the best part of the podcast because I completely agree, Urmi. Thank you for catching that allies part and elaborating on that because, you know, I feel like, and I tell this all the time, that I feel like I grew in my career more because of the mentors and the networks that I built than even from my skills. Like, I don't feel like I'm the most intelligent, like objectively intelligent person, but I feel like I'm really good at networking. And that just came natural to me. And I feel like that put me in rooms and put me in situations where other people were advocating for me and took me places, that I wouldn't be able to take myself. And so you touched on a really amazing point about networking, building a network, having mentors, and having people who have your back in times when you don't have your back. Because, there's all these motivational speeches about, like, oh, you should believe in yourself. But sometimes you can't, right? Like sometimes
Yeah.
a frame of reference, someone else to tell you that, hey, you know what, you're doing okay.
Yeah.
Or even if you're not doing okay, just have someone to vent, right? I friends who I call and tell them, hey, I had a really bad day, or I felt like I was so not confident, or my presentation sucked, or whatever it is. And then, they just make you feel lighter about it. And then you stop thinking of it in such an intense fashion, right? So I think that's really important to have. So everyone who's watching, please do think about it. I think this is a really good point that Urmi touched on about mentorship, building your network, building your support system, people who actually care about your success, because sometimes people can be just there around and you think that they care, but you actually need people who care for you, sometimes for your career even more than you do, and almost believe in your potential when you don't, so that when you fall short on it, then, and I don't know how many times that has happened to me where
Yeah.
I haven't believed in myself and someone else would have believed in me, and is why I reached here. So
Yeah. Yeah. I agree. I agree.
yeah. So, speaking of, success, I guess to some extent, where we are talking about how we've reached this point, right? How you've reached this point in your career, where I think it's safe to assume that you are successful, that you have built enough momentum for yourself, enough growth for yourself that, you feel comfortable calling it a success, right? And I
Yeah.
think, first of all, it's important to call it what it is. And, we shouldn't shy away from calling something that is something we're proud of what it is, right? And
Hmm.
you wanted to be in portfolio management, you got there. So, great job. Congratulations to you on that. But what would you define generally? What would you define as success in your career and just holistically as a person, as a human being?
There are a few things when I think about success, because I think my definition has transitioned through the years, especially when you think about career. So I would say it went from being achievement driven to impact driven, because I think at the beginning of my careers, I was very much focused on like, promotions and getting climb the corporate ladder, getting all those achievements, getting all the credentials and so forth. But now it's more about making an impact through the work that I have done and using the things that I have gotten along the way, like my credentials, my promotion, the fact that, maybe you are in a certain position in a company, you can use that power to make an impact. So I am more focused on like impact driven, and along with that, when I think about success, I think success is also about finding a balance between, your personal life and professional life, but also making sure that the two are intertwined, because you always want to make sure that it's your most authentic self, no matter where you are, whether you are at home or you are in the workplace. So for me, it's really about making an impact. And the way I do this impact is really through my volunteering work, such as mentorship, showing up to women's empowerment events. It could be with the work that I do with women in leadership. So I think that's how I feel successful, is that I know that I'm making an impact in someone's life. I'm leaving a sparkle. That's how I like to call it, in someone's life, through a little action. And so that's how I define success right now. Yeah.
I think that's one of the best answers I've received for defining success. And I couldn't agree more, Urmi. I think, especially in times where I've been, as I said, lonely and not having enough of a purpose in life, I think the fact that I kind of try to always stay focused on either some charitable aspect, some volunteer aspect, or something actually made me feel like I was doing something that had a bigger purpose, that was not just about me, right? And I think people don't realize how much that can impact us positively because, it makes you feel like you're kind of selfless, right? And it makes you feel
Mhm.
like you're trying to be a good person, you're trying to be and you also get to meet other people and hear
Yeah.
their stories. And sometimes you realize, wait, you know what? My problems are not even as big as, some of the people that you meet and hear from, right? And so it also gives you a lot of perspective. I think the impact aspect is just very spot on because uh, and I tell everybody, whoever I meet, that if you're going through something, just try doing something like going to some volunteer event, or like even it doesn't even have to be focused on your career. It can even be something personal, like feeding the homeless or whatever cause that you find that you feel drawn to,
Yeah.
right? And I love animals, so I go to the animal shelters and I actually spend time with the dogs and the animals there.
No.
And I get them food and some blankets, and just talk to the staff as well, because even the staff there who take care of these animals, it's not an easy job to take care of shelters. And you have to really have thick skin, and you really have to have a compassionate heart. But sometimes
Mm.
they get tired of taking care of them, and because it's a very underappreciated job, right?
Mhm.
So when I talk to them, they tell me, oh, nobody comes and talks to us, so. And I
Okay.
didn't know that. I was like, I was just talking because I like talking to people, so I just talked to any random person. And they were like, oh, and initially they thought I wanted something from them, and I was like, no, I just chatting. They're
Yeah.
like, oh, that's very nice because nobody comes to talk to us. And so you can just make anybody's day by just even exchanging a smile or talking to somebody. So, and that can be considered impact, right?
Yeah. I agree.
So anyway, coming back to success, and you mentioned that your definition of success has evolved over time. I'm assuming that it evolved because of, just growing up, becoming an adult, you know,
Yes.
having real life responsibilities and personal priorities kind of take over. But
That's right.
right, but when we're in our 20s, we feel like, we just want to be, kind of take on the world and just, we had this ambitious drive, which is not wrong. It's natural to feel that way, especially in your 20s. But what would you suggest maybe as a better approach to not feeling like you have to just conquer the whole world, and maybe have a more regulated
Yeah.
approach to it?
Yeah. So let me tell you this. It's okay in your 20s to be ambitious, driven, and achieve all those things like credentials, promotion, and whatsoever. But I think on the long run, one thing that has helped me a lot to basically fuel my definition of success is that I embrace the mindset of being a lifelong learner. So given how things change quickly now in everywhere, in every single industry and in the world, and how, technologies are ever evolving, I think one way to keep up with the changes is that you are continuously learning. You have to adopt a mindset of being a lifelong learner, but at the same time, stay grounded and stay curious and adapt to the change. So I think the only way to really thrive and to survive to the changes is to make sure that you are always learning and embracing all the changes. So it's always important to look for the next thing, how I can improve myself, how can I be better at this. And in your 20s, it's normal. It's normal that you want to look for a promotion and so forth, but think about like long-term sustainable, which is being a lifelong learner.
That's very good advice. Yeah, I think Amazon as well has one of our what we call as leadership principles, which is called learn and be curious.
I love
I,
that.
yeah, and you actually kind of put it in a very similar sense. My previous manager, he used to always encourage me to take on a path of learning, and what I mean by that is every time. So he was like my vent buddy outside of work. I would call him and say, "Hey, today I had a horrible day. Tell me something nice." He is an awesome manager and a wonderful friend. But apart from that, whenever I would tell him something, he would say, Priyanka, just try to channel your emotion by putting it into, like learn something about AI or just
Yeah.
read this, and he says, oh, I'm reading this book about machine learning. Why don't you read this too? So he always encouraged me to take a more logical path by asking me to learn something to kind of channel my emotions that I would have, which would have been heightened because of some scenario or something, right?
Hmm.
I think that also what you said also ties into this, where it helps us be more emotionally regulated, or rather
Yeah.
channel our emotions in a better, more productive way by focusing on learning something new, because then that actually gives you the sense of accomplishment at the end of the day that, okay, I learned something new, I know something new. And I
Yeah.
think even psychologically, as you feed your brain with more new things, your brain starts to focus on those new things and kind of put those other negative things in the back burner, right?
Yeah, and that's the thing about learning. It's like you're doing something for yourself and you feel like you're progressing. So you're not standing still, there is a progression. It's like you are doing something better each day. You're getting closer to something each day. So it's like you're always in motion. So that's why I like that kind of mindset. And I remember like even at work, I'm always being told that if you want to make things a bit more interesting in your life, especially when things can get, mundane, or it could be the same a regular habit, it's always important to have that mindset of like being a lifelong learner. And that doesn't need to be at work, it could be in your personal life. Do you do it after work and you feel much more fulfilled, I would say. You feel fulfilled and richer internally. Yes.
That's a very good point. That it's not just about work, it's about living a more holistic
Yeah.
life, right?
Yes. Yes. Exactly.
Because some people, they like learning about the stuff that they're doing at work, learning more about it after work, right? But then some people, they do a lot more outside of work, and they like learning about those things. Like someone's trying to like go for their first camping trip, or they're like just some like a trekking geek. They just love trekking, and they're just constantly thinking about how do I plan this next thing. And so, just as you said, just putting yourself in some different types of activities or things that kind of make you feel like you're kind of in motion all the time. And I think I think stagnation leads to anxiety and
Yes.
depression, right?
There you go. Stagnation. That's a nice word. Yes.
Yeah. And
Yes.
so how do you, yeah, I guess, I don't know if I should ask you this question, because you seem like a very calm person,
Thanks.
but just like all of us,
Thanks.
you're like you're the first person telling me this. No, I'm just kidding. But as a, just as a natural human emotion, everyone I'm sure goes through their own share of anxiety, right? Different types of anxieties in life for different reasons. So how do you
Quite anxious too.
see? So there you go. Like I think everyone, sometimes people tell me like, "Oh, Priyanka, you seem so, confident," and I'm like, "Did you see my hands shaking while I was presenting?" So I think everyone has this, but everyone feels like they're the only ones that have it.
Yeah.
So can
Yeah.
you like shed some light on just normalizing this? Because I just want to normalize it that, someone, people like you and me and just people who are accomplished in general or have a career path, even we can feel those insecurities and have anxiety for different things. And even someone who's in their 50s and 60s can feel anxious, right?
Yeah.
Age for that. So how do we normalize anxiety?
So anxiety, being stressed are part of me. I don't know why you said I look like a very calm person, but
You
no.
do though.
Well, thanks. There is one thing that I do very much when I'm feeling extremely, extremely anxious. I try to write about it. I write my feelings and my emotion in my journaling book, which I have right there next to me. And I tend to write about that to calm myself down. They do share this best practice for you to always like end the day on a positive note. So they always say like write down the three things that you are proud of, three things that you have accomplished, and they also want you to start the day the same way. I know sometimes this is not always possible because people get busy, but I think like 5 minutes of your time, just like writing down what are you grateful for, it does have a very good impact. Like there were studies that show that it has an impact on your quality of your sleep. It has an impact on your mood. And so like journaling has really helped me a lot. And I tend to get onto that practice a bit more often. And even when I don't have anything to say, like, today was a nice day, that's also good. Like I think people don't realize that when you start journaling, like your mind automatically is focusing on the good things that happen during the day. And I can notice that. Like I can notice that in myself, how, yesterday I did this and I was just thinking about the good thing about it. So it's a good practice to start journaling, especially when you feel very anxious.
I think you hit on a really good point, journaling, and I've heard that from even my I used to do meditation, and I had a coach. Even that person used to tell me that when you're done with the day, just write down like positive affirmations, right? Just
Yeah.
write down something good about yourself or something good that you felt in the day, and it kind of it as you said, it psychologically is proven to rewire your brain over time
Mm-hmm.
because
Mm-hmm.
the your hand movements actually are registered by the nerves in your hand that are actually going to your brain. So your brain is actually you're actually rewiring your brain over time in a much more faster, effective way than you can by just saying it, with your mouth, because it
Yeah.
doesn't really tied to, or it's not as closely connected as the way you write with your hand. So, I think one of the things that I do, I think I journal, but it's interesting for me. Journaling has been about writing like poetry.
That's so
Yeah.
nice.
Yeah, and so when I get really sad or when I get really happy,
That is so nice.
yeah, and I wouldn't realize it's a poetry until I'm done with it, or when I read it back later on, I'm like, wait, that sounded like a And so for me, that's how my brain, I don't know, processes thoughts like in a very. I think as a child also I was very dreamy. I lived in like a very imaginary world, and so maybe that's
Yeah.
why my brain naturally wants to write something dreamy and imaginary and something like that as an outlet for my emotions, sad or happy, you know?
Yeah. You're gonna be the next Rupi Kaur.
I don't even let my parents read my book of poems because it's too embarrassing.
Really? That's how bad it is? Okay, good to know.
Yeah, I will spare you the horror, but it's just like because some of them are really cheesy, and I'm like, oh my god, why did I write this?
It happened to me as well, but this is when I read my diaries from when I was, they say, teenager, and I'm like, oh my gosh, that was me. And
Exactly.
I'm like, oh my gosh. And I,
That's me,
yeah, very embarrassing. Yes.
right? Yeah, yeah.
Yeah.
I mean, and speaking of diaries, I actually did have a diary that I still have. I don't know who preserved it, but I never preserved it. But it was from when I was in fourth grade, fourth, fifth, all the way to like 10th grade. And oh my god, the stuff I've written in it's so bad. Like
Yeah.
I've literally like I made all these kinds of promises to God saying, "Oh, if you make me get 100% in math, then I will do this for you."
This is like the movie that I just watched, Jab Take Jan, where she's like praying at the church and saying like, if you please make this happen, and I will like, she says something in the first scene, and then she was like, I'm gonna quit smoking if you do this for me or something like that. Yeah.
And you watch Hindi movies.
I do not as regular as before.
Okay, what do you speak at home and
Here I speak so here I speak English and Bengali. When I visit my parents, I speak Italian. Hold
okay,
on.
Italian and Bengali? That's a very interesting combination. I'd love to hear that. All of a sudden you're European and then all of a sudden you're South Asian.
I know, right?
But no, I don't want to take more of your time, Urmi. Just to conclude, maybe we can, if you can share some quick tips on, just your advice to the early career generation, or even just to people like us, because as you said, we should be lifelong learners. So anybody in general for career, like if you can give one tip for career advice and one tip for life advice, because I always think life advice and career advice kind of go hand in hand. So,
Yes.
you know,
Yes, I agree. So I'm gonna reiterate the first one, which is always being a lifelong learner in your journey, in your personal journey and professional journey. The second one would be to always stay curious, always be curious about learning and exploring different things and having that growth mindset. And the third thing would be to that's a very hard one because I feel like there are so many things that I can say, but I would say to find good mentors, which is what we have spoken about during the whole conversation. But I do think that if you have a supportive and encouraging support system, they will really help you to achieve success and help you to grow as a person and as a professional.
I see, awesome. And any other general life advice about just, after the 9 to 5 part, what how should people view life, or how should people take life in general apart from career?
I think a general advice would be to, that's a good one too. Oh my gosh. There's so many as well. I think as a general advice would be to cultivate one passion, to start with one passion. I think it's important to find our reason for being. I read that in a book, in a book that was talking about the concept of ikigai, which is a Japanese concept, and they always say like, find your reason of being, which is the meaning of this terminology. And I think as human beings, we should really take our time to cultivate a passion of ours, a passion that will really help us to feel fulfilled and satisfied in life.
Yeah, and finding that higher purpose we talked about, right? Something
Yeah.
that is beyond yourself.
Yeah.
Awesome, Urmi. This was much better. This was a much better session than I expected. I mean, if the session is going longer than the allocated time, that means, I think we did a wonderful job. Thank you so much, Urmi, for your time today. And I look for, how do people reach out to you, or how do people find you if anyone wants to connect with you?
So I have a LinkedIn profile called the Urmi Hossain. I also have a YouTube channel called Urmi Hossain. And my podcast is called Stories Beyond Borders, which is available on Apple and Spotify. I also have an Instagram account with the same name. And if people want to purchase my book, it's available on Amazon and it's called Discovering Your Identity, A Rebirth from Intuition Struggle.
What's the name of the book?
Discovering Your Identity, A Rebirth from Interracial Struggle.
Very interesting. Okay, and is that on Amazon? Awesome. Okay, I'll look that up. Wow, I didn't know you were an author. That's I yeah, that's awesome. Seems like you have many different kinds of skills, and along with being able to be a sound communicator. So thank you for your
Thank
time
you.
with me. And
Thank
take
you.
care and have a good day.
Thank you.